Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our first AI for HR workshop. My name is My name is Sophia, and I'll be here to moderate the webinar. So as people start rolling in, we would really love to know where you guys are tuning in from. So let us know in the chat. I'll start with a few housekeeping notes. So our speakers, who I'll introduce to you very shortly, will be referencing a bunch of resources and prompts throughout the webinar. All of those are found in the resource tab on the right-hand side. So please be sure to download them before the session is over. They'll be available for free over there. To create a more interaction session today, we'll also be launching a few more polls than usual. We really want to make sure we get your thoughts. We hear what you're dealing with, struggling with, and when it comes to AI. So please participate and don't be shy to add your thoughts in the chat as well. We'll also have the Q&A tab. So again, on the right-hand side, you can submit any questions that you have throughout the webinar. So please submit anything and we'll answer them throughout the session. And if time permits, we'll also run a quick AI speed clinic at the end of the session. So let us know if you have any use cases, anything you need help with, and we'll think through it together live. I'm also super thrilled to present to you our speakers for the day. So we have Sarah Azadi, our Senior HR Business Partner here at Workleap. Sarah is a seasoned HR leader who scales processes across organizations, and she helps companies find the intersection of engagement, performance, and alignment. So she's a great speaker for this workshop today. We also have Eva, who is our head of growth at Workleap. Eva is an AI super user. She has built an entire team of AI agents. She could literally build a rocket using AI, but today she's going to tone it down and show you how to build a skateboard, basically. So in this workshop, she'll help HR and managers build a simple, repeatable workflow that anyone can copy. So before we jump into it, I want to kick it off with a prompt, and we're curious, how are you currently using AI today? As questions start rolling in, I will introduce Sarah, because Sarah, I'm really curious to see your thoughts on these questions.
Thank you, Sophia, for the warm welcome. And hi, everyone. Happy to be here with Eva and Sophia. So let's take a look at the poll results. First of all, thank you so much for participating. I love the engagement, and we hope to make this a very interactive workshop. So please continue the engagement throughout it all. And just want to comment that I love the range of responses, because it really proves that there's no one size fits all solution or place in which you need to be when you're on your AI journey. I really love seeing that there's curiosity and this intentionality behind exploring some more. So even if you're in the exploring but not live just yet, or trying to get buy-in from stakeholders on utilizing AI in your day-to-day, it's totally valid and an okay place to be, because we need to start thinking about these things in our day-to-day. And that means that finding those human-centric ways of leveraging AI within our HR practices and pain points. For example, when we see like fragmented feedback loops, or if there's decision fatigue, change fatigue, or too many tasks that are maybe low in value that are taking up some of your time that could be then leveraged towards more strategic, influential tasks as leaders and HR practitioners. That's really where it can come hand in hand to drive your focus on human-centric practices rather than those light tasks, which happen to be the number one, I think, or most popular response here. So that's really interesting. So let's dive into some content. And today we're here to workshop a common challenge that we face as leaders and HR practitioners. So I'd like to paint a picture for us all here to set the stage. So let's pretend we're a leader in the scenario, and you're at the moment in time where you're doing your performance evaluations and you're doing a review for your employee Louise. You just had the debrief with her. You talked about some great areas that have been accomplished over the last few months. Let's say it's a quarterly review, or perhaps like a 6-month review. And you also talk about some areas to develop, to focus on, to grow. You might have even set up some intentional growth goals. But shortly after the review takes place, you notice that momentum fades. Operational talking points take over your one-on-ones, and you tend to focus less and less on those growth goals because it's just so easy to do so, right? We tend to get really focused on that day-to-day talk. So what does Louise feel in this moment? If we take a moment to think about her emotions, it could mean that she feels overlooked. Perhaps she feels less recognized because she doesn't have those intentional career conversations over time, or she doesn't see that future that the organization is heading towards. She doesn't feel like she's aligned with it because the org might be growing at a, let's face it, pretty fast pace. We all have quite a lot of initiatives, and our businesses are going through a lot of change. So if the business is growing at this evolution, yet Louise is stagnating, well, there's a delta between the two that is growing and growing. So we have a risk of underperformance even. That's not intended, but it is a symptom of not having these continuous feedback loops and growth conversations. So we want to prevent that because there's an impact on our customers, there's an impact on how Louise feels, there's a risk of not achieving our business goals, and there's even a risk for the remainder of Louise's team to not feel like they're as on board or aligned because they're seeing their peer who might feel low in terms of morale and not recognized. So there's so many risks, and that's why it's a really important problem. And we have a pretty interesting workshop today to develop a way for AI to actually come hand in hand with HR and leadership to take away the hardest parts of this task, which is to prepare for those meetings, because it could be daunting. You might not have time for it, and instead have a centralized and even scalable solution. So we would like to ask another poll question here and hear from you, the audience. So you're going to see it prompted on your screen in a few moments. But looking back at your own practices and what's going on in your business, where does your post-review process break down the most often? Again, no right or wrong answer. We just want to get a pulse check from you to see what's your reality, because it'll help us also tackle this workshop and see where the audience's reality is at, so that we can also keep that in mind. But it's definitely a really good question to ask, I think, to try to problem solve and pinpoint where exactly do you need to put the most of your efforts in trying to find a solution for this challenge to look at. So yeah, let's look at the responses in a few moments, but shortly I'm going to pass the stage over to Eva, and we're going to have the workshop kickstart to show you the simple and scalable solution that can be possible thanks to AI. Interesting, because I see the number one. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to bring Eva onto the stage, but you can go ahead and comment on the poll results.
Yeah, so I see the number one response is actually manager and employee accountability. And that's so perfect because we're talking about just that, with how to create and facilitate a solution that can make them more owners of the process, thanks to like a template that could really kickstart the conversation. So yeah, let's look at it.
Amazing. So do I just jump in?
Let's go for it.
Perfect. Cool. Yeah, I love to see those polls because I think it's relevant to what we're going to talk about. Thanks for coming. Thanks for joining. I'll share my screen in a minute. But for context, we did another kind of AI workshop about a month ago where we went through the process of using AI to deliver high quality performance reviews. So I'll use examples of what we've done in this workshop to continue to the process. And today we're going to build a monthly coaching conversation that can happen between a manager, a people leader, and their employees. And we're going to use AI to go from the performance review that we generated and that we delivered all the way to some of these polls here, keeping employees aligned, tracking follow-up actions, and making sure that managers take accountability on training and coaching their teams. So without further ado, I'll share my screen. Here we go. All right. Okay, we're seeing my screen. Yep, all good. Perfect. Okay. What we did last workshop, foundational performance review. We gathered some peer feedback. We, gave a rating, whatever kind of internal performance system you're using. And then we prompted AI to help while voicing over our own feedback to deliver a structured feedback output and a performance review narrative that could be shared with the employee. The example of what came out, this is not accurate data. This is for Louise as a customer marketing and lifecycle manager. We through AI, we were able to get an output that looks like this: accomplishment, specific behaviors where they were where Louise was really good at, and then where she could grow and work on areas of improvements and a growth plan, and then ultimately clarifying what great looks like. So I think ultimately, a short and sweet but fairly well written review. So that's what we did the last time. Now, what I want to do is I want to build a template that I can use across my team members to deliver the same standardized and fair assessment and coaching, so that I can take what I gave them as feedback, good and bad, and then continue to provide feedback while also clarifying how they can keep growing. So that depends on your performance system, whether you're a 1 to 5 scale type thing, but if they were a 3, how did they get to a 4, and so on. So we'll start with the first step, which is building the actual coaching and conversation template. So two approaches here. Either your company already has specific guidance around how to deliver feedback and templates that they want you to use. Fine, you can use the prompt A, which I have here. I'll show you in a minute. I'll show you the B, which is similar, just no template. It's like coming from scratch. Like, I do want to have this conversation. I want to make sure I help and support their growth, but I'm not really sure where to start. Perfect. AI is going to help us out. So prompt B, you'll see it's very long. I'll show you in a minute how you can get there with a very loosey-goosey idea. But the prompt goes as is. You're an elite executive coach, organizational psychologist. You have 20 years of experience coaching quite senior leaders, specialize in creating high performance management tools that drive measurable behavior change and team excellence. AI in a prompting expertise way is really, really good when you give it context. The more context about who AI is and how and what role they're supposed to take in order to give you the best output is really a game changer. And I suggest you try, right? You try the same prompt with and without context, and you'll see how much better the output is when you do. Then I give it a specific task, create a monthly reflection coaching template that's going to serve as a transformational one-on-one conversation between managers and their direct reports. I give some guidance on the format. The core architecture needs to include performance snapshot, win and achievements, behavior excellence, and so on. Advanced features, for example, for accountability over time, including habit formation, what to focus on in the future, and a section to customize input. So obviously, we want the template to be customized for your team and your company. So what are the core values that you're expecting, right? What are the expected behaviors? Maybe you as a manager have some specific behaviors. Maybe you as an HR leader has behaviors that you kind of share to the broader team, right? That are a standard that people need to demonstrate in order to be valuable, a fit, and a high performer within a company. And ultimately, a few different things around the quality standard. See, this is interesting because we said he's an expert coaching and behavioral specialist. AI thought about psychological safety, which is really good because we do want our team to feel safe with those conversations. So maybe something that we wouldn't have necessarily thought about when creating a template that now AI will keep in mind when it actually does it for us. So long prompt. And now maybe some of you are wondering, well, great, but how do I get to this prompt? Because I'm not going to sit there and write that for an hour. Great question. So what we can do is ask AI to tell us how best to prompt him or her. I don't know yet if it's a she or a he, but we can say, AI, help us figure this out. So I'll go and do just that. We're not necessarily going to get the exact prompt, but I'll give you an example. I'll voice over. That's something I do often, and I really, really highly encourage you to do. We take a lot of time to type, some people more than others. Personally, I do, but I speak quite fast. So it's a lot faster and sometimes better and more efficient to just speak to AI in a way that then AI can structure your thoughts and then put them in practice. So I'll do that right now. I use Super Whisper. If you are interested in using this tool, I think it's the best voice to text tool and so far, much better than the integrated GPT one, because sometimes this is buggy and I lose 10 minutes of conversation. But feel free to do it to your own sauce. So I'll do it right now. Great. So I really want you to help me generate the best prompt, like a mega prompt that can help me create a monthly coaching template. I'm a manager at Workleap. I lead a team of 5 people in growth. And I want to provide feedback on their previous performance reviews. I want to make sure there's some, accountability mechanism there, maybe some like habit building plans. I want an opportunity to share some feedback. I want them to self-reflect as well. And ultimately, like, I want you to give me the best prompt so that I can give it to AI to deliver on that template. It's an example. It's going to process what I'm saying. Boom. You see that it's in there now. For context, I'm using O3 in ChatGPT. It's one of the best advanced reasoning model. If you would do that with 4.0, it give you something fine, not as good. So I recommend when you're trying to do things that are a little bit more complex to use O3 in this case. So we'll do that. I'll think a little bit. While it's thinking, there's a new model that's just a couple days old called O3 Pro. As it says, it's the best at reasoning. It does take a lot of time to think. So I would not recommend using this for most of your use cases unless maybe it's like a bigger analysis. Okay, so here's the mega prompt that it's giving me. See, similar, he's starting with context, system and the role. You're an executive level leadership coach. Your audience is a high performance manager at Workleap. Interesting. Very interesting here to see as well. So this is my AI that I use on a daily basis. It has a memory. It keeps track of what I tell it. So you can see here what it says. That's not what I gave it right now, but it remembers that we had those conversations. You can see accountability loops. You can see follow essentialism principle. This is something that I personally truly value, that I give AI often as a reference. So it's nice to see it there because it shows how AI work. And the more you use AI from yourself, the better it knows you and what you're looking for, and the more integrated it will be into your own delivery. So just thought I'd point that out because it's really interesting. And encourage 80-20 thinking. Again, I'm in growth. That's something that I like do on a daily basis. So I kind of picked up on that. And then again, you can see the rest. I'm not going to go, through everything, but this is how you can go from, a loose idea, how you want AI to help, to a very clear prompt that now will be so much more impactful for you. So we can use this one, or we can use this one. But regardless, I'll start with that one, and then we'll maybe test the other one if we have time, just for fun. Okay.
While you do that, Eva, there's
Yeah.
a question in the chat that I think could be really interesting to answer actually
Yeah.
right now. So how can we confirm there are no AI hallucinations infiltrated in our HR functions or automated tasks?
It's a good question. I think there's always a little bit of a read through that needs to happen, right? In this case, this one I didn't take too much time to read this one through, but the prompt that we're going to be using, I think, are all things that, quite frankly, either I would want to come up with or better, because you're talking to an expert with 25 years of experience. So there is some calibration that needs to happen there. And in this case, I think the risk of hallucination is fairly minimal. because it's really using it to build frameworks that then you will be delivering and kind of tweaking. So I wouldn't worry too much about that in this use case. I think I would worry about it more, especially when it's about, let's say, personal information of employees, biases. I think that's something to be mindful of. But again, you're still in control here. So what I'm not suggesting to do is just take everything for face value and dump it into a review. There's a human element that I don't think is going away.
I agree. And like at Workleap, when we deployed AI, we also created a lot of like documentation and job aids around how to use it. So it's also really important to, I think, partner up with like your compliance team, if you have one, like legal counsel and HR, to like define these guardrails, because fundamentally, like you said, Eva, like you need to have that human revision, and you can't just let it calibrate, for instance, your performance ratings across the business because of the biases. So there's certain things that you definitely need to be a bit more communicative with your org, and say that you are fundamentally submitting something if it's a performance evaluation. So in those cases, like it's you who owns the result, with the help of AI, of course. So make your organization really intentional and mindful about like needing to review whatever is output from AI.
Yep. Very good context, Sarah. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead, use the prompt that we had built earlier. We're gonna say go. Again, the output will vary. If it's you, if it's me, if it's today, if it's tomorrow, things change quite a bit, but the principle is the same. You should still get something pretty good. So with O3, because it's a reasoning model, you can see it think, which is interesting. So it didn't think very long, but you can see what it goes through. So again, sometimes you're like, ooh, no, that's not what I really wanted. So you can always pause and say, and adjust the behavior or the thinking. So in this case, it gave me this, well, with the fields to fill at the top, a performance snapshot. I like that, self-rating, manager rating, some comments. Okay, interesting. Any wins and achievements? What are the values? See company values. I didn't give the values, but I can, and I can do that in a minute. Expected behaviors. It kind of just created some for me. This is going back to the hallucination. It kind of assumed that that's what I want to see. So something for you to be mindful of. It's not bad. Like, I kind of want those things, but it might not be the most relevant for either that employee or the company. So something to note. Impact value creation, development needs, two ways exchange feedback, employee manager, manager employee. Okay, interesting, right? I love that. I didn't ask for that. Maybe I didn't think about it, but it's a great section. We definitely want to encourage the bilateral feedback going on. Habit formation, what could they start, stop, continue? Love it. Commitment to accountability. So that could be maybe off the back of habit formation. I think it's a little too much. So maybe that's something, again, I'll give you an example of how you can fine tune that, but I'll voice over. I think it's pretty good. I find that the habit formation grid, the commitment accountability table, and the future focus is kind of all the same thing at the same time, but it's all three different sections. It's a little bit redundant. So maybe you can merge it into one section. Like, again, what I care about is that there's a clear ownership over owning an improvement for the next month. We could call it a habit, a future focus, or a priority. But they need to be owning an area of improvement. They need to clearly lay out how they're going to be going about at improving at that area. And ideally have some kind of peer accountability mechanism, because as best practices coaches out there would say, the more peers can take part into your growth and hold you accountable, the better you will be at actually changing the behavior. So we'll see what it does with that. It's thinking. So while it does that and it's thinking, I just wanted to show quickly, I said it depends on the model you pick. It depends on the AI you choose. So I don't know which AI your company's using. Maybe you have a corporate one, or maybe it's just you personally. But I'll show you quickly if I were to use Claude. In this case, like, I'm a pro user. I have Sonnet 4, but again, there's other models here. Sonnet are pretty good for that. Opus are more about like coding and data and stuff. So I'll use Sonnet. I'll do that. All right. And we'll just see, for fun, what it would give me. Different model, different training data, different output. So it's pretty good how it's starting. See, it's adding question that, GPT didn't necessarily have. It's restraining the achievements into only highlighting the top ones. I really like that, right? It gave me the behavior by, listing them clearly. Impact value creation. So anyways, habit formations used a similar framework. So ultimately it's similar, but also different. So again, you can play around with that and see what you prefer. Claude is really visual as well, which is always a bit of an added value. If I go back here, it kept the same framework, and then boom, it gave me what I think is a much better habit section. What to improve, who owns this, what are the milestones, how are people going to help you achieve that success metric, and when are we going to talk about it? Perfect. Loosely, I'm happy about this. In practice, you might take a little bit more time, but again, it still took me 5 minutes, 10 minutes, to go from a loose idea to this. I think it's like a lot of added value. So we've got our monthly framework. Now I want to apply it to people. So in a similar fashion, I'm going to use actual data to feed it to say, okay, help me pre-populate the template, not the self-reflection portion, of course, but so that it's kind of pre-populated with some areas for them to work on. So I'm going to do just that. What I'm going to give it is their most recent performance review, the role description. So it really has a good idea of what I'm actually expecting from them. And any new pieces of feedback that, I got in the month. And that will come from me or that will come from peers. And I'll show you how to do that in a minute. So prompt 2, again, similar way. I did it ahead of time using the same kind of approach that I showed you earlier. Okay, here we go. Perfect. And then I'm going to feed it. And here is the job description. I prepared it ahead of time. Again, it's all fake, but this is for a director of customer marketing. Boom. And then I'm going to say her latest performance review here.
And I also think it would be great to add perhaps the like organizational objectives, just to tie in like the outcomes and the strategic impact, perhaps. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Also keep in mind our organizational objective. And I could feed the KPI as well of Louise. I'm not going to do that right now, but just the more context, the better.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we want to grow revenue. Let's say by 20% year over year. We want to be known as the best HR software in the world to help engagement and performance. We want to grow our upsell and cross-sell opportunities. Growth, remember, by 30% versus last quarter. Okay, just for example's sake, the ones that you'll build are going to be a lot better. So I gave it the prompt, I gave it some organizational objectives, I gave the performance reviews, I gave the job description, and now I'm going to give it some additional feedback, like my own self-reflection as a manager I'll keep it short for this time around. But again, that's where you can maybe spend a little bit more time. That's the you part, right? That what you think of them, AI can help digest, but they can't come up with it. And I'm also going to weave in some peer feedback. So I'll talk about Louise. Great. So Louise overall, I think, had a really good month. I was really pleased with her project and the new email sequence that she delivered as our customers on board. It really helped us meet some of the objective in growing our upsell opportunities. She used AI to customize the sequence, which was really innovative, also meeting my expectations of proficiency in AI in her role. I also really appreciated how open she was in giving me feedback. There were some instances I was a little bit too micromanager, and she told me, and I think that's great because that's what I want to see. This like open, genuine, bilateral feedback. The two areas that I feel didn't go as well for Louise last month. One is tying loose ends. So, I think Louise is really good to take on and start projects, but she's not always the best at closing them. So often I had people asking updates about projects that she was leading that weren't fully completed. Also for myself, when I were giving her some projects, she loves to start them. So she'll have like 30 projects, new ideas, and so on. But then sometimes you're not really sure, are they still a thing or is it like gone in the ether? And the other areas I think she could work on is the ability to take feedback. So although she is very good at giving it, I don't see it as strong in her in receiving it in a way that is humble and that is focused on learning and curiosity moving forward type mindset. So I often feel she's defensive when she gets feedback. It's not the type of attitude and behaviors that I'm expecting. So I'd really love for her to reflect on how she can integrate that feedback in a mindset of growth and not in a defensive one. Okay, so I kept it short, but you can have some notes, loosely written. Usually, what I do is bullet points before. I think about it a little bit ahead, bullet points, and then I voice over my bullet points. So I still thought about it a little bit ahead, but okay, so now that's my feedback. I'm going to say it here clearly. Now this is my feedback manager. And lastly, yeah, Sarah.
I think it's really a good moment to ask the question from the chat because the question is, you showed us the difference between ChatGPT and Claude.ai. Are there any other AI platforms that you use that you would recommend? And I think it could be interesting to talk about like how you may be pulling information from some of our own sources using another AI tool, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, totally. Yes, I'm going to do that right now. It's perfect because I'm going to show some peer feedback. But yeah, great. In terms of like public tools, GPT and Claude are the ones personally I use the most for their versatility, and they're really good in most use cases. The other one that's really good is Gemini. Gemini 2.5 and up. So it depends on like what your team or your company has, Google, Microsoft, or so on. So Gemini is another one I really like. So those are the kind of three that I would navigate towards the most. And I'll show you an example of our own tool called Workleap AI that we're building in order to also do all this thing a lot easier, but also connecting to your internal data, which I think is the most valuable part. So let's say that, I would want to integrate some feedback here, not necessarily about Louise, but more broadly about our team. I could go to Workleap AI, and then, it's connected to our internal system. So it has access to, we use, Microsoft, so Confluence, Slack, and so on. It can't have like private anything, right? But it's just able to pull data for you so that it helps do those type of exercise. So for example, if I ask Workleap AI, give me some feedback I received from my team in the last year. We'll see what it says. Okay, interesting. My team appreciate individual recognition, whether it's public or private. That feels that's personalized, good vibes are meaningful. This is like our internal, we send good feedback and we call them good vibes. And you can see it took 20 sources, which is pretty interesting. It went into our engagement tool, and then it looked at the feedback that was given to myself, to other people in my team, and then it kind of surfaced it. This feedback is like public already, so it's not like fishing for information. It's just like helping gather all the data so that, oh, actually, cool, that's good. I can use that. In this case, I could ask about Louise, which I won't. And it would pull from public sources, right? Again, it's not about like taking your private Slack conversation. It's like Louise probably received some public feedback multiple times, right, during the year. Amazing. I can ask Workleap AI to do just that and help me with this kind of coaching system. So I think that's another tool. Again, we're building it. There's always things that we can do better, but I think that's the future. It's connecting where the conversations are happening to help you as HR teams and people leader to be the best at growing your team and engaging them. Yeah, cool. So I kind of gave it a lot of context. We'll see what it says. Thinking. All right. Yes, I want you to complete this template. I don't know if you caught it. It said, I'll do it for June 2025. Again, I didn't say that, but it's good. We're in June 2025, so it makes sense. I could go back and say no, but yeah. Okay, so good. It's interesting. See it. Now it hallucinated. No, it didn't, because it's picking up from the performance review. So amazing. It says business impact. That was all in her performance review. It mapped it against the achievement and outcome that I was expecting. I like that. Again, you might want to tweak it if it's not exactly how you want it, but I like that it did it for me, so I don't have to do it. Great, amazing. Cool. Now it filled my section here. It didn't assign a rating, but I didn't tell it to either. So good. I could tell it, give her a 3, give her a 4, or you can just do it after. But it did clarify the example that I shared. And again, it also, which is powerful, it used example in the performance reviews that mapped the behavior expected and surfaced it to say, yeah, that fits. Again, is it true? Is it not? I think it did a pretty good job. Something that you want to make sure like you flesh out. But I love that it did it again. And like, maybe I wouldn't even have thought about that, quite frankly. But now it thought for me, so perfect. Impact, value creation. I'm going to go a little bit faster here. Okay, two-way feedback, what's working well. So see, it didn't really understand in this case, employee to manager. Obviously, she didn't tell me that. So I would need to clarify that. Open channel, bilateral feedback, provide upfront priority, blah, blah, blah. Innovative use of AI, that's what I said. Closing loose ends, if even better, and adopt a curious. So it's also reframed what I said, right? Remember, I dumped it a ton of random thoughts, and I think it did a pretty good job, right? Close loose ends promptly and adopt a curiosity first stance when receiving feedback. I don't think I could have said that better, especially as a francophone. I mean, that's like really well worded. And then here you are. So ultimately, I think it did a pretty good job. When like I've worked on it, I was a lot more in back and forth, so it probably could be even better. But like overall, I'm pretty happy about it. Time check. Do I keep rolling? I think there is two things that like I can show, and then I can pass it to the next step.
I think there's so much to share. I think we're at the 20-minute left mark. So
okay.
Maybe
one more and that's it.
Do one more and then yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe this one is interesting. Clarify what great looks like. As you know, I think as a manager or as a leader, we can never be clear enough in our expectations. So what does great look like for Louise? What am I expecting her to do so that she moves from a 3, which would be meeting expectation in our jargon, to a 4, which would be delivering above? Like, I don't think we take enough time as managers to clarify that. And then we review our employees. Sometimes they're dissatisfied. They think they were a 4, but they're just a 3. But have we done a good job at clarifying that? I don't know. So I'm going to try to do that with AI. Again, you still need to think about it, but I'll do it in a way that hopefully uses all the data we just shared about her role and my expectations of behaviors and so on to clarify, okay, Louise, in the next 6 months or a year, if you want to move from a 3 to a 4, what do you need to do? So we'll do just that. And then I want you to do it for Louise.
And just to say, this is something that like I actually get questions around from leaders so often. They really have like employees really ask them, how can I get from meeting expectations to exceeding expectations? Like, what's the path to get there step by step? Like, obviously, we don't give them the exact formula because it's a lot also like ownership on behalf of the employee, but this contextualizes it and visualizes it so easily for the employee to see and have like a few examples, right? As we
Yep.
can see.
Yeah. So whoa, it gave me examples of what great would look like from a 3 to a 4. And, it's like, here's the type of thing you should accomplish. So you can either take that and translate it into specific context, or you can sometimes leave it as is to give expectations of, like, broadly speaking, what would that look like? Closed loop discipline. Okay, frame cross-team requests with context perception, co-design solutions, seeks feedbacks with curiosity, document learnings. And then you see the next step of like a 5, cultivate experimentation culture across the organization, mentor peers. Like, it's really a different mindset. So you can ask AI to say, okay, if you were to give me one line summary of what a 4 or a 5 is in this role, what would it be? And then you can start, with that when you talk with Louise. So ultimately, I think again, spending a little bit more time, but think about the quality and the excitement of your employee when they're like, oh my God, I know exactly what I have to do if I want to deliver above expectation. And if they don't do it, then they own it. But at least it's so crystal clear that I think it just makes for a better experience overall and hopefully more performance. That's it.
I love that. Thank you so much, Eva. And there's so much more I know. So you have the prompts that you can definitely refer to in the resources. Do download it. And if you have questions, keep it coming. We still have a little over 15 minutes. But yeah, now I want to talk about how this all ties back into HR, like engagement strategies. We just saw some really intentional and like thoughtfully crafted prompts. As you saw, Eva was going back and forth, right? So having like almost a discussion with um, an agent of change, right? Like, how can I make this more and more closer to my ideal state? So it's really to be used that way. So don't take the first iteration, keep on iterating with AI, and you'll see it's going to give you some pretty like human-centric templates that might surprise you. And so it comes back to engagement because Emma referred to it like Louise was perhaps more fearful for feedback, like receiving feedback. By making that a habit that's actually in that tracker, like continuously working on changing her mindset towards feedback or changing her mindset towards like even herself giving feedback and making it this really like non-segmented loop is actually where you see the momentum rise. And it makes me think about if ever someone here read Atomic Habits, like to build a habit, you of course need repetition, but it's also by seeing positive momentum that it makes for a good habit. If you lose that momentum or it stalls and you have resistance, well, it's going to be obviously a habit that's maybe even a bad one or a failed. So it's really important to, I think, like leverage these continuous feedback loops because fundamentally, if you think back to Louise and what we were talking about at the beginning, she's going to feel like she has a future that's bright and she has been doing work day in, day out with her leader, like month after month, check-ins are taking place. So even if it's not that overnight promotion, it doesn't mean that it's not growth because there's small wins to celebrate. There's the day in efforts, day out efforts that can be talked about during these moments. And it feels like something is happening. It's not just this expectation that no one is owning. And I see like, comments in the chat, like, how do we make sure that employees are owning it, leaders are owning it, even if the template exists? And I'll talk about that as my next piece, because scaling it across the business is truly where the magic happens. If you just keep it within one team, like it's a great idea and one great experience that's static, right? But we want it to be fair and calibrated across the business. And you'd be actually surprised to see another way that AI can be leveraged for HR leaders when it comes down to like change management and truly embodying this as a behavior in your organization's way of thinking, so that it's a cue to have these career conversations. And the hard work is done. Like it's been done once by building this engineered prompt that you can plug into AI, and then it can, as we saw, like tailor it for each employee, so that you're not spending 80% of your time building it for a conversation that's actually where you should have the most of your intentional energy spent. So yeah, I'll talk about that. But before I do showcase some insights about that, there's a prompt ready for you as well for HR leaders to be able to leverage AI in scaling up this kind of initiative. So do download the resources, because you'll see there it's engineered to really give you a timeline of every single initiative milestone you need to have done to be able to roll this out to your entire organization. And it definitely cuts down the planning work from few hours to maybe minutes, like depending on how big your HR team, whether it's small or big, it could really help, because you're effectively spending most of your time in those most meaningful conversations of deploying this to your entire business. So sitting in those executive buy-in meetings to showcase the value of why we need to do this and why do we need to spend our time on doing this. AI can even give you some really thoughtfully crafted benchmarking information against the tech industry. If you have like other sources of information within your similar industry, like it really can give you a lot of research and evidence to make up your case. It could give you an overview of who to reach out to and when to get that buy-in, to onboard them onto the initiative. It can even develop some great training materials and assets. So you'll see in the prompt, it includes like an ask to develop FAQs so that employees know right up front the answers to their questions. And of course, like it's a back and forth. So you need to feed it as much information for AI to know what is the context of your business, what kinds of employees do you have, how often do they have these conversations to begin with, and have some success metrics in mind of where you want to take it and make it sustainable. So it's really your sidekick when it comes down to like the change management planning. It can really take away that piece so that you're instead taking part of like the delivery and rolling it out. And this can have like the power of just simplifying and reducing the time between a great idea that Eva had in this example to rolling it out across the entire business. So we don't have, it buried under a pile of initiatives that we definitely want to push out. Like we want to do as much as we can in our roles, but sometimes you don't have as much of that time. So you could really just get to that rollout faster and then focus on like making sure it lives on and it doesn't die, because we all have seen initiatives try to be rolled out and sometimes it's just not adopted. So why not? And then that's where your focus can be, is on reiterating it to make sure that it's matching up with the needs of your business. So it's definitely possible to scale up these things to the entire business. And like I said, the benefit is having a workforce that's more candidly open to feedback. There's going to be more growth opportunities, and definitely a good way to showcase the recognition and the value that you're giving to people's growth, because you definitely want them to grow with the business. So on that note, we have one other poll that we're going to be asking to the audience, because we're curious to see where you're at when it comes down to readiness in scaling AI-driven HR workflows. So you'll see it pop up on your screen right here. So again, no right or wrong answer. We're just really curious to hear like what's blocking you and what actually do we have as ideas together to help you unblock whatever stage you're at. So curious to see the answers here, but it's definitely okay to be like ready to pilot versus exploring ideas for later. Or if you do need that executive buy-in, then we can also chat about that, and if it's of interest. So let's see what comes up. So 46% of respondents are saying it's or they're at the stage of just exploring ideas for later. And then the second most responded option is need executive buy-in first. So that's very valid. I think there's definitely a lot on our to-dos. So we're creating like a nice to have list of to-dos, I think. So definitely add all of these prompts, because whenever you're ready for it, it can definitely be a great way to start, because it's not too big of a change where, you know, you're asking for a very big mindset shift. It can be easily implemented, especially if you're leveraging the change management prompt to roll it out to help you get like collective buy-in from your organization. And yeah, that's really interesting to see. So thanks so much for engaging with the polls. I'll pass it back over to you, Sophia, for the next piece.
Thank you, Sarah. So I'm just going to re-share my screen very quickly. All right. Well, as you've seen from, oh, sorry. So if this webinar really resonated with you, we're very excited to announce that Workleap AI will officially be launching in July. And Workleap AI is a power-up to our existing Workleap products that help you make faster decisions, reduce manual work, and create better outcomes throughout the entire employee experience. It helps HR focus on more strategic work and gives managers more time to coach and have meaningful conversations. So if you'd like to learn more about how Workleap AI can help you with performance reviews, feedback, and engagement, please let us know. I'm going to launch a poll right now. And just an FYI, we really value your time. And so, as a token of our appreciation, anyone who meets with someone from our team will receive a $50 gift card. So, we'd love to know if you'd like to meet with someone to learn a little bit more about Workleap AI. And I do have one more question. If clearly by our speakers today, it's obvious that we're very passionate about empowering and upskilling HR when it comes to AI. And that's why this workshop series was born. We'll continue hosting these sessions and sharing resources on our website and in our newsletter to help you apply AI in real HR use cases. So to round that off, we'd love to gather some feedback. I'll launch one more poll, and we're just wondering if you would like to join a community where we can collectively chat about AI in HR, how we're applying it, what struggles we're facing, and where we see any opportunities. So I'll go ahead and launch that poll as well. Let us know, and with that, we'll get back to the Q&A. If you have any questions, be sure to submit them, and Sarah and Eva will be responding to you right away.
Looks like there's a question from Elvira. Do you add a clause at the end of your performance review stating that you used AI tools to write the performance reviews? I'm concerned about legal accountability using AI, knowing that performance reviews are legal documents. Thoughts? That's a really good question. I think just in our case, it's like embedded within the product, if ever it has been. But it's definitely something that you can also like have documentation on to specify, like I was mentioning, governance wise, it is important to note that like the final submission is done by a human. Ultimately, it might be leveraged through AI, but like the name of the person submitting it is the owner of the content, if you will. That's my take on it, but happy to hear you as well, Eva, on this. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, I think it's a good question, and it's I think maybe a good one to tie with Sebastian's question about how to use confidential employee data with AI models. So obviously, you might not work for an HR tool company, so it's fine. But you can still use GPT, Claude. The only thing is, what I really recommend, and you're right, it might need executive buy-in, but is to get a team or enterprise account. So this becomes a closed loop environment for your company. So that means that you can share literally any private data. There's like huge privacy policies around that. You can use sensitive data, financial data, all this stuff, because it becomes a closed loop playground, similar to like when you use Excel and you have, your private financial performance data. So in that way, you can really be free of sharing, kind of oversharing information, because you know that it's like closely tied to your company and it's not, going to be in an open model somewhere. So that would be my big recommendation. If you cannot do that for executive sponsorship or so on, then obviously you need to refrain from sharing any personal information. So in that case, I would do it. I could still do the same process, but I wouldn't be sharing names, specific performance numbers, but you could still talk about hypothetical employee Dan, right, and say, here's what I'm being challenged with by Dan. Again, give it the same context, best executive coach, all this stuff. And you wouldn't get specific data that you can copy and paste necessarily, but I think you could still do a template. You could still have some really good valuable feedback. So the best would be to have like that privacy and that environment to play with, but otherwise just kind of use workarounds. And I wouldn't put personally, but again, I'm not like a data privacy expert or a lawyer, so you take that with a grain of salt. A full disclaimer. But I voice over to my team that I've used AI to do the performance review. Like I'm doing those workshops, they all know that I do that. By the way, if that's helpful, from a privacy standpoint, again, we have a closed loop environment, so it's not really a problem. But even just to let your employee know that you've used it, I think is a fair practice. So I'm very vocal about it. But if that makes sense, nearly all my employees said this was the best performance review experience they've had. So, and I don't say that to like throw flowers at myself, but more so because the quality it helps me get to, it's still my thinking, but it's like sharpening it to another level. And they felt it was an incredible experience for them. They had like a lot of takeaways, things that they can act on. So, it's anecdotal, but I think I wouldn't like sweat too much about that. I would make it vocal and very transparent so that there's no feeling of being manipulated, if that makes sense. But that's kind of my take on it.
I love that. That's such a testament to the power of AI, like the best performance reviews ever. Wow, that's good. Well, kudos to you too, Eva. I think you put a lot of work into it.
Thank you.
Another question, how can you assist educators teaching with AI? I love this one because it's a different angle that we didn't talk about too much, but it's definitely something that can be leveraged. For example, depends on who you're educating, but you could have such like a different set of individuals coming from different like industries perhaps, or different levels of expertise. And I think AI is great at like targeting the content towards that audience so that it resonates with everyone and you're getting the key messages across in a very like translated way, not like language speaking, but translated towards where the person's experience comes from, which which background like have they come from industry wise, and tailor your content. Ideally, it's going to also like reduce the time you're taking to research about how to do that. It's just going to give you a few options or iterations. And another way that I think it could really be leveraged is in like learning assessments. Instead of scanning through like your content that you've delivered, you could ask it to just pinpoint a few quiz questions and answer. It's like even simple stuff like that could take like logistically some time to compile. AI is great at just scanning a lot of information. Like imagine a curriculum that's over 3 months of work, the notes from students, the reflections that they've had over time. If everything can be virtually, of course, like electronically stored, that's even better, because like we saw with Eva, you just plug and play, and it could create some really interesting like assessment questionnaires as well, I think. And that's just off the top of my head, but
Yeah.
it's really limitless.
Yeah, it's really good, Sarah. The only thing I would add is maybe adaptive tutoring, right? Like, how do you take the person's context and maybe challenges in learning and use AI to translate that into a very specific plan for them, like a mini AI tutor, basically that they can prompt and they can interact with. I think that would be super interesting, like literally a virtual tutor.
Practice makes perfect, and we don't have the luxury of having human tutors all the time, so that's a great idea, Eva.
Cool.
And with that, we're at time already. Awesome. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. I hope you all learned a lot today. And again, download the resources at the end of the webinar as well. Make sure to log everything, and we'll see you in July for the next webinar, hopefully.
Thank you, everyone.